Winter has washed very quickly across the regions of the Ironlands, much sooner than what anyone had initially anticipated. It has really come now into full force into the Havens, a more fueled, rolling hill region of these lands. To the south, where the recent invasion of these red-tunicked people setting aflame many of the villages and settlements, disrupting the lives of all the Ironborn, and the tyranny trying to take control and build their way up. A small battalion of this tyranny army paused at a village they had completely taken over and set many fires, burning the bodies of those who fell in battle, setting flames to any provisions that were made useless. While they have taken over the village, the few of the Ironsworn that have survived and submitted to these invaders, in their own homes, they started to snuff out their hearths and fires and pile up the fresh snow around their homes as warnings have been sent out from their shamans. Two red tunics patrol the outer walls of the settlement that are now half broken or half charred. They carry torches with them and attempts to just continue to keep warmth with them as the winds are very bitter and cold. And as they walk and patrol, they discuss about these rumors and quote-unquote predictions that these Ironlander shamans have said. One turns to his fellow compatriot and says, "So did you see all those so-called Ironsworn just piling up the snow around them, some of them even trying to leave to go further south?" The other one says, "Aye, it seems to be a superstitious lot that apparently the sudden winter storm is going to bring some crazy entity down upon us all. That the fires are just attracting all kinds of mischievous things that are going to come and wipe us out." Ooh. The two tunics chuckle. They don't quite notice a swirl of wind and blistering snow in the distance. As they're walking, they do feel the air starting to get colder and colder, and they're struggling hard, rubbing their hands together, passing the torch between each other, until one does finally see almost a vortex approaching them at rapid pace. But the moment that he turns his friend and points in the direction, the flames almost dissipate from the torch. The deepest depths of cold winter descend upon this village that they have claimed. Hello, and welcome to Unbound Lands, a solo campaign of the RPG Ironsworn. If you're not familiar with Ironsworn, it is a tabletop RPG. You can find it for free on the website, ironswornrpg.com. It's made by Sean Tompkin. I am so sorry. Sometimes I mess up things. Check it out. I'm not sponsored in any way. Sean Tompkins is. I'm not sponsored or paid to do this in any way. I'm just doing it for the fun of it, for the experience of it, to share my solo experience and hope that I get better and better with every session. We'll see how that goes. If you don't know me, I'm Natalie. Under my chin here, you can see Natalie Chenard, and my handle at Ghost Candle in most places, except if you're on Twitch watching me, it's Ghostly Candle. Feel free to give me a follow somewhere down here. Hoping to break that 50 follower count towards affiliate, so would appreciate it. And if you do like my stuff, if you go into the About section down below, there's links to various ways to tip me, to send money or coin or whatever my way. Even just general support is fantastic. Otherwise, not much else to say other than always minor content warnings. I've got the last couple times. Some fights can get into some bloody and gory territory, so if you're sensitive to that kind of stuff, then definitely viewer discretion is advised. Otherwise, let's roll our title screen and continue on to see what is going to happen with our protagonist, Eldred. Oh dear, my camera is messing up. That's not fun. Sometimes the switching screws up my cameras here. Waiting to see if it catches it. Well, I will at least do my best to continue the story, and hopefully I don't get too many really ugly faces in this lagging camera. Or I may just have to switch scenes. Let me see how this goes. Okay, it's liking my player screen, so not too fond of the B-roll. Alright, let's continue our story. We are within the hut, the home, the abode of Eldred Undaughtr. She is feeling incredibly bruised, possibly a broken rib or two, after being completely trampled by the giant wild boar that started to rampage out in front of her village as the caravan containing friends and other folks from the Tempest Hills up to the north coming in, bringing in supplies and iron of additional foods that they grow up there in hopes to help aid and trying to bolster the supplies and the effort to protect the Ironlands from the invaders that have come. So within the abode, Eldred is now undressed. The assistant to the shaman elder is in there with her, as well as her friend Kiaraval. You can really see, even as fresh as the trampling was, there's just massive bruising along her one side, just really deep, like purple, blue, black. And as they're in there, immediately rushing through the door is her father, Unther, already in a mindset of, my daughter got hurt again. What the hell is she doing? So he comes in a full, not rage, but definitely concern with heat. Goes straight for Eldred. Just full voice blast. What do you think you were doing? And goes to like almost clap her shoulders, but then the shaman's assistant kind of puts an arm out And he's a little man compared to Unther, so he's just like, please, she's been wounded and I'm trying to help her, don't disrupt me. And for the moment, Unther's just like, thought you could go out and take on a wild boar, you thought you were being smart, what were you even? And he pauses as he looks to Kiarval, and then he looks back over his daughter, seeing she is essentially in a state of unrest as she's being checked over. And he pauses and looks at Kiarval as like, boy. And at this point, Kiarval, he is somewhat paled, and when he sees and hears being addressed in that way, looks to Eldred, kind of now starting to realize what the implications are here, and his already face that's reddened from like wind burn and sunburn, and seems to always get redder, and he quickly stands up. He's like, yes, sir, and he starts walking straight at the door. At this point, Eldred doesn't know what to say in terms of how to address her father, considering she already been reamed out about the sword fight the other day, and now being caught up in trampled by a boar. Seems to be getting quite a knack for trouble in a very short amount of time. So she kind of just sits there letting the shaman assistant make sure she's patched up and salves are put on the bruising, and she's got support for any broken bones that may have happened through that little short hunting of the boar. And her father just sits down on the bed, basically double face palming, saying, what have I done to deserve the stress that you give me? Did I curse? And Eldred just kind of chuckles a bit at that, says, well, Dad, I don't know what gods you could have pissed off to earn a daughter like me, but well, I guess we're both learning a lot of lessons, aren't we? He just grunts at her and puts the one hand down to turn his head while still keeping a hand against his face. He's kind of almost glowering at her, but there's still so much concern about what's going on. And he's just like, no, this is the reason why I don't want you to go to Red Rock. If anything happened while the caravan goes, how you seem to just be attracting all the danger. And Eldred pats her father's hand that he's put down on his lap. She says, well, I guess at this rate it doesn't matter whether I stay or I go. If I stay, well, maybe the firstborn will end up showing up and wiping out the town, and I'll be one of the first ones to go, or, I get taken out along the road, be a sacrifice to the wolves or something. And her dad, tenses up, like, don't joke about that. But yeah, you might be the sacrifice to the wolves if that happens. And they both kind of chuckle and give a quiet look to each other. And this is the relationship they do have, where it can get intense and it can get fiery and arguments can happen. But Eldred and her father do very much care about each other. Because her, without any mother or even a mother figure in her life, her father's always at least tried to be protective of her, even if she's been more rebellious and foolhardy and continues to have that pattern in her life. But he nods as he gets up. It's like, well, we can't wait for you to recover from this one. We're going to be leaving as soon as possible, possibly tomorrow morning, depending on how things go tonight. So just make sure you're packed and yeah. And then he stares to the shaman assistant who has finished bandaging Eldred up and is just kind of quietly sitting there. And he looks back at Eldred and then to Uthgar, sees Uthgar staring him down, looks back at Eldred. Like, yes, okay. Oh, okay. And he gets up. It's like, she's gonna be fine. Just make sure she keeps applying salves, okay? And he starts going out the door. And Uthgar nods, starts to go out the door himself, turns back to Eldred, shakes his head out and closes the door. But for the most part, the village is a bit of a buzz of between the caravan from the north having come in now, going over what supplies they brought in and building up the supplies of the village for those that are staying and for those that are going. The boar that was killed out on the road has been taken in and is being prepped to be the dinner for tonight for all the village. It is a very massive beast, and this is a small town of Tizerbook, so more than enough to go around. But the hide would be saved to turn into whatever is needed it for, and much of the meats will be used over the course of whatever they're able to stretch it out for, between the fresh meats and using the bones for stews and such. That night, there is a call for everyone to join in the longhouse. The new visitors, the friends that of Eldred and Uthgar, her father. And for everyone to just sit and see what the final preparations are for the caravan to be leaving in the morning. Now, usually when winter comes, there are plenty of fires that try and keep all the homes and places warm. But this past day, it has been instructed to keep the hearths to minimum warmth as possible. And the reasoning would be discussed later that night. So while everyone's getting prepped and brought in, getting their serving of dinner, just a mix of that boar and some root veggies, just kind of slathered and piled into their bowls. The elders sit kind of at this long table at one end of the longhouse. The three of them. One most known is Cadlin, who was the village, or is the village shaman that we have seen before, and is the oldest of the village here. And she is flanked on either side by, on her left, a man named Bjorn. He has very weathered, kind of a mid-tone olive complexion, very kind of saggy jowls and high cheekbones, almost a spindly kind of frame structure, but very kind of ropey muscle work on him. This was a man that was very much a laborer for most of his life, and it shows on him and makes him seem a lot older than he is. On the other side of Codlin is another woman named Torha. And she has just really super white hair that's coiled and bushing out all over her head. There's little metal trinkets weaved through, just of either coins that are pierced through to become little jewelry pieces or thin metallic beads kind of just tapered in there. She has very, very deep skin, very dark eyes. There's a lot of warmth within her face, a very gentle gentleness to her. But she is known that she'll have this gentle, motherly style to her. She can be very stern and strict and hard on people, or to make sure they stay on track with what is needed to help keep the village thriving. So Tora, Cadlin, and Braun sit at that village elders table, as there's more of a round table around the rest of the longhouse, where everyone's kind of facing almost in the direction towards each other and keeping open to everyone. There's a fire in the center that helps keep the space warm, and it crackles very softly, like there's a low ember, like it was made hot enough to try and heat the room, and then was quickly brought down, just enough to still maintain some heat. Yet Cadlin starts to stand up, and everyone looks in her direction. She says, "So it has been decided, what able-bodied people we are to send down to Red Rock will go as soon as dawn breaks. Most preparations that we're able to do are done. There are many metals that will have to be done at the forge down there. But we think it'll be best to start sending people, since the winter will be too harsh to maintain everyone here." And there's a bit of murmurs about it, some acknowledgement of, the sudden early winter does hamper getting or building the supplies, building any meats or harvesting or foraging that they were working on before it came. And Adlin continues saying, "The select few who are staying to help protect our little settlement, and of us elders who will remain, we will just continue to maintain our village, to give word to anyone up north and to anyone who visits to direct them south to maybe help in the future efforts to come. As we know, once this winter lessens, because we all know the Ireland's seems to just always been winter. It's either lesser winter or greater winter." And everyone's kind of nodding at that. A couple pound their mugs on the table. Summer is just a mild-ish winter here, so that can be agreed upon. But as she is trying to get this kind of joke moment out, she does straighten and stiffen a little bit, her face becoming a little more stern. She puts her hands together says, but there is always dangers that come. I have seen within the flames that this early winter isn't just some natural means or gift of the gods to push back these enemies that have come up from across the seas. It seems with their activities of them burning the villages and the landscapes, that intense heat and flame has attracted the tempests that have been staying mostly within the mountainscapes. And some of the older folk nod to this and get very darkened, stern looks in their faces. And the elder says, there is a chance that this tempest may come up as you travel. So mind my words well. It has been tradition whenever we feel one may be a threat to us to dampen our flames and hide ourselves within the snow, to build spaces of snow and stone so that they may not sense us. These tempests will suck the very heat out of you, the very warmth from your body. So if you ever think you see an intense swirl in the wind, a swirl that seems to turn and come towards the caravan, make sure you go and dive into the snow. Bury yourselves. This is what knowledge we have to tamper against such an entity. And there are a couple murmurs amongst the crowd. Again, more of the elders kind of nodding at this advice. Eldred has heard stories of different entities that have showed up through at least what history the Ironborn have in these lands. And there is some that seem almost mythological, or just not something that was ever known to those from beyond the seas. But a tempest was always one entity that was very much cautioned. And even though it could be a tale of don't go out in the middle of winter, you know, just something to scare little kids to keep them within the walls of their settlements, it is something that the Ironborn have come to learn is very much a real thing. So this is an entity that what brought that winter because of the activity of those that invaded the lands. In a sense, Eldred sees it as kind of a double-edged sword in which, you know, this tempest could very much be focusing on those red tunics if they don't understand that their fires may be bolstering this entity and attracting it and bringing it to their captured encampments. But on the other side, the entities and creatures of the Ironlands don't discriminate. So if you don't know how to defend yourself or protect yourself and you're out there, the tempest will very much turn on you. It's just after whatever heat source, and if it senses your body, it's going to come for you. But with that piece of advice from the shaman, the elder Bjorn stands up, both hands kind of on the table to support him in his stance. He says in a very kind of deep, husky voice, as someone who may have probably smoked quite a bit, but he says, and with this recent visions of what is out there. As good shaman Codlin said, it is of utmost importance that you travel with great haste to Red Rock and do not dawdle on the roads. Push the horses as hard as you can, hopefully without losing them, and get as far south as you possibly can before anything can come after. And Tora also stands up at this point, grabbing her mug, and she says, "And remember, we are Ironborn. We will defend our homes from any threat that comes, and we will survive whatever comes, whether winter or tempest or enemy. We will survive and remember our names." And everyone chants back in unison, "Remember our names," and take drinks. And with that, the evening continues on with people finishing their meals and either going back for those leaving to pack, for those staying just to make sure they help those who are leaving, and double checking inventories and storages as such. And dawn does break. But many folk have already woken up well before, making sure, double checking, triple checking the wagons and carts that anyone is bringing with them, that they're able to bring with them. Double checking the supplies, making sure things are secure and handled. And everyone going on this journey is being handed either swords or daggers or whatever weapon they are comfortable using. Eldred, of course, has her sword as well as her bow and arrows. Her friend Kiarval stays with her, as well as both their fathers, Unther and Grizz. And as they're piling on their the provisions for the journey into the wagon that Grizz had brought down with the initial caravan from the north, he's talking with Unther, and he says, we didn't have enough time to really talk about what's fully going on here. But I think if it really goes tits up, we all can go back the other way, back up to the Tempest Hills. You know, the mining is great. The hills are littered with all the things we need to put between us and those red tunics. And Uther chuckles. He's like, "Grizz, I never known you to be one to run from a fight." I was like, "Oh, no, if things go down, I'm staying and either being putting it down or get put down, but hate to see any of the younger ones lose themselves to what should have been handled by our grandfathers." The pair of them kind of look over to Eldred and Kiarval, who are playfully just teasing each other. And just in that moment, the two fathers smile. There's a quiet, just acknowledgement of protecting whatever future they were hoping to have here. Just a connection that they know, and realize could be at great risk given all the dangers that lay ahead. But they also know, having only a couple generations into these lands, nothing but dangers here. So the caravan starts to pack up and go out. Let me get some wagon sounds here. No, that screen doesn't want to play with my camera. Okay. So, the caravans gather up anybody on foot, staying close to either sides of them, and they leave the village. It is very early in the morning. And those birds are super loud, so please, birds, let's not. So, Tizerbrook on this map sits to the very north of the Havens in that nestled field area just south of the Hinterlands. And they are now heading to Red Rock, which is a settlement that is known to sit on the little kind of hilled area just below that H there of Havens. So it is a few days' journey to try and head that way. Hopefully, with a quickened pace, it would only be 3 to 4 days. But it is winter, and the roads, of course, are covered in snow. And they do have people walking. So even with taking turns as people get tired, to try and continue pushing the caravan forward, it's going to be some time still. So, typically, there would be rolls to make, but since Eldred is not the one heading this caravan, she's actually going to end up sitting in the wagon a lot. She is still pretty hurt and maimed from the last couple fights. We did not get to do any recovery for her. So we're actually, in the meantime, going to do a sojourn. And what a sojourn is when you spend time in a community seeking assistance, roll a plus heart, and if you share a bond, add +1. So it is her own community, and she does have her own bonds. We got her father, Uthgar, and of course, her friend is now with her as well, Kjarval. We'll still try and give this a roll here. And she's got a lot of bonds around here, so she gets a 1. So she go back to the player screen so we can see what the roll was total. So our total roll here was a weak hit. So we can clear a condition, we can recover, or we can provide aid. So in this time, Eldra's health is still a little low, and she is short in spirit, but I think it's important to get that health up. So we're going to add that health, which I think is technically, yeah, that. So yay, now she's feeling healthier, which is good now that they are out on the road. So the first day goes by pretty easily, other than the winter and the snow and the blowing winds. The caravan is maybe around 20 people. Everyone just kind of going together. 4 of them being Eldridge, her father, Gris, and Kjarval. A couple more that came in from the north, as well as, many of the other Tizerbrook citizens. Eldred's mentor, Elfhinder, decided to stay in the village. They're going to need a well-established hunter to be able to provide for the village if supplies start to run low. So she's made that decision to stay behind in Tizerbrook to provide that service and make sure the elders are protected and the village is protected and supplied. And camp is pretty makeshift. It is kept very... the campfires and stuff are kept very low under the threat of a possible tempest rolling up. So they try and build up walls of snow around them and keeping close to thickets so they can utilize any branches or other foliage to try and maintain this wall. Piling up layers of snow over their little makeshift tents, and really everyone kind of huddling together in little groups to try and keep each other warm without, concerns of creating any more fire needed. But it makes for a very exhausting sleep. Not a fun time to try and sleep pretty much like side to side with, other people around you with the cold still like at your face. But you do what you got to do, and hopefully that discomfort pushes people to go further the next day. And the next day does arrive. They continue to push on. And towards midday, as the group pushes forward and the wind really starts to pick up and snow starting to fall heavy, there is a moment that someone in one of the front wagons stands up. And raises a hand for a moment for everyone to stop. And Unther, with their wagon being a couple back, he yells ahead. What do you see, Kieran? And the individual named Kieran, Kurn, he holds his arm for a moment, still looking ahead, his eyes squinting in. And he can see far off in the distance just this wide, swirling, almost vortex happening of snow picking up off the ground and from the air, creating almost this walled cyclone. And it is a few yards away. But we know with things typically, even amongst natural, can move quickly. But among unnatural, can move very quickly. So Kieran, in the moment that he registers what he's seeing, turns back to everyone and shouts, "Tempest!" And in that moment where he is panicking and jumping off the wagon, everyone else on wagons strips off and people start diving into the snow. Some people pull blankets that were left to be covered in snow and cold and throw them over the horses. Some of them also, for a couple of wagons, quickly unhitching them so the horses can run. And everyone's just else diving in the snow, starting to pile up snow on top of themselves. And in reality, there is a form to this creature, this entity, but it's not really something you want to fight. But I'm going to add it to our fun little progress because it's fun. So a Tempest is a dangerous foe. And for the moment, they don't want to be really caught by it. We want to try and hide. So everyone's diving into our snow banks here on either side of the road. And we're gonna try a face danger roll. We're gonna go with Shadow for this. So Shadow, as a part of this, is to be able to either with deception, stealth, or trickery. So we're trying to be stealthy and very quick to hide ourselves within the snow. So we're going to see how well Eldred does at that. We don't have any bonus, and we only have basically a 1 in Shadow. Yeah. So this will be fun. Oof. No. Eldred. Why? Okay. We're gonna burn because one of those was a 2 and we can beat that. So we're gonna burn for a weak hit. So in the moment of rushing in and piling the snow, everyone just kind of helping each other hide within it, they cover their faces and go down. And they hear the howling winds just rush up upon them. And in that swirl, the area does feel like it just gets instantly degrees, 10 degrees, 20 degrees colder. And like the very heat is already dissipating from their bodies. And amongst the maelstrom of this creature, there is whisperings. And they can't quite make out any words, but there is voices howling within that wind structure. It's starting to pass right over them all. Eldrick can hear the horses whinnying for those that are still locked to the wagons where they couldn't unbuckle them to let them run off. And as the whinnies become more strained and panicked, it does very, very quickly die out. And it feels like hours as everyone sits waiting for the wind to calm and waiting for any sign of this entity having passed over. And moments go by before a voice calls out and says, "All right, head count." Eldrin starts to shift herself up from the snow. Caraval is there right beside her, putting a hand on her shoulder. They see people popping up. And as they go and start counting across, they do find a couple people that were way further back in the line. Maybe didn't quite hear the call or just weren't fast enough. They found a couple people in the back just frozen, barely covered in the snow, like they were in the moments of trying to hide themselves, but now they were completely frozen over, almost in a statue pose, just in that moment of being on the ground, trying to pile up, and got flash frozen in that moment. Same thing happened to... Let's roll a d4, just because rolling dice is fun. So they lost 2 horses. Either from them having run away or been flash frozen. A couple of them were under the ones that were under the blankets that they were able to throw on the couple of them. Maintained. So they are going to have to try and pull these wagons, and incorporating with that weak hit, the journey is going to be delayed by a little bit. But for now, the Tempest did pass over. Now, that doesn't mean it will not come back. But that is the way it is. And in the moment as they're counting up everybody, there is a pause to bring the bodies of the couple that were fallen to one of the little groves that they were near. It may not be the best pyre that they can offer to bring peace to their souls, but given what it is they're dealing with and where they are, they figured they will do what they can. They can't make a hot fire because it would track the Tempest back. But they set up a small kind of bedding of twigs and wood, placing the bodies upon them. And they, of course, get the caravan moving, and those who remain light the pyre, and when there is enough lit to start up, they walk away. And as they continue down the road, maybe 20-ish minutes, they do see a bit of smoke and glow in the distance behind them for the ones on the wagon that are able to look back. But it is a reality of these lands. People can be taken very quickly, whether by each other or by creatures or by these mythical entities that wander the lands between sea and mountain and forest and fields. That night at camp is somber. Some folks that were closest to the pair talk about a couple things that they remember of them. They share of some dried meats and goods. And repeat the process of the camp before. And there is more caution this night, now that they have experienced this tempest. And though it's typical for a couple people in the camp to stay awake, to trade off, to watch perimeters, they now have a couple more people staying up to watch, to pay attention to the winds and the changes, just to make sure. The morning does come, and luckily the Tempest has not turned back, at least to their group. And they continue another day, pushing as hard as they can to make up for the lost time. The winds aren't as bad today, but it doesn't really help when you're just cold to your very bones, sleeping in just such unpleasant conditions. And you would think taking such a long journey there'd be time to talk, but a lot of times it ends up being very quiet moments. More thought on what it is to come, what we're going to do when we hit Red Rock, and of course, recently we've just lost. Kiarlov and Eldred, they talk a little bit through this journey. Him asking her about, what the fight was with the Red Tunics, if there's anything she could offer for possible tactic in a fight, if they have to fight them anytime soon. And of course, Eldred offers that, and she asks him how mining up in the Tempest Hills and the Hinter lands are. But as time wears on, Kiarlov does kind of pull Eldred aside during a third night of camping, as everyone's starting to kind of pile up and prepare for a night and hope it's another night not disturbed by the Tempest. And he pulls her aside and he gives her an iron coin. And he says, given everything that has happened, the things you've told me, the things we are learning about our threats, and whatever it is you're running into, you need to promise me that no matter what, you're going to live. And she takes the coin in her fingers, but has her hands over his. And in the Iron Lands, when you're swearing over iron, which is considered a one of the more natural elements among the people. It becomes an iron vow, which is very sacred and taken very seriously amongst the Ironborn. For to swear a vow in this way, you do it with the full intent that you're going to complete it. So she puts her fingers on the coin, but clasps his hand within hers. She says, I would gladly vow this as long as you vow it too. And in just brief moment, they put their foreheads together. And he replies, I would make this vow gladly. We're away from each other far too much. I can't imagine if death were to make it a permanent thing. And Eldred laughs a little bit. Says, well, as long as we meet death with glory, then we will surely see each other again. But let's make sure we live as long as possible. And not let these red tunics or Tempest or whatever else out in these lands take it away from us. And Kjarval smiles but perches his lips a little bit as though he wants to say something else. But before any words can come out of his mouth, the voice of his father, not yelling, but definitely loud enough, says, Kjarval? And he sighs, shakes his head. It's a vow now. And they both return to their parents and join the camp to settle in and help build up what they need to protect themselves. And with that, I'm going to put into our little progress list here our first vow, which is a vow to Kjarval. Just to live. And with that little moment, we're going to call it here. It's over an hour, and I've been trying to keep this as a little hour segment, so yeah, hope you enjoyed our little story, or whatever's going on here, trying to squeeze in little bits here and there of different things. You know, the dangers of nature and mythical creatures, and what could potentially happen when people try to love each other in such environments. So, if you liked the story and what we're doing here, feel free to give a follow somewhere down below. For those watching this on Twitch, I have been posting these in my VODs on YouTube, so if you're watching this on YouTube, you could also use that follow and also use that like. And if you just like me, if you want to support me, because I could very much use very much support. I love support. I thrive on support. It keeps me alive. I have a bunch of ways you can do that, whether you want to, again, give me a follow or a like wherever you see this. On Twitter as well, you can give me a follow, like my stuff. share it, whatever. Best place is Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com/ghostcandle. If you support me there, whether you give me a follow there as well, throw a coin my way, or buy from my digital goods shop. Anyone that supports there, I have a lot of one-off content that I'm building towards, so you get access to any behind-the-scenes stuff, including things like how I design Eldred. So that little picture you see on what I name as the player screen there, you can see what went into creating her look. Or you can see my other, tabletop content, like going into a deep dive of my characters that I make for tabletops. And more to come as well. I'm going to do membership tiers. I'm going to do it. It's going to happen. I'm trying to build towards it. Things are written out. Otherwise, there's also, I have Throne if you want to help me better my setup. I could use some better lighting situations. I work in a basement, can only do so much. Or get me some arm work, so maybe I can position my mic better, because it's like right here. Otherwise, that is all. So thank you so much for joining me, for hanging out, and watching my little Ironsworn story unfold. Always interesting to see how the dice, if they will favor what I really want to happen, or if they'll really throw a snowball at me. And of course, this is every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so live on Twitch. So come back again next time. Tomorrow I got art live stream. You can also come back for that. Once again, thank you. And see you next time.